Hi, this is iTTV. I am Dr. Meena, your biology teacher for today. Hi dear students, we are meeting again. Today we are going to continue with lesson 4 under the topic of transport in biology form 5. In today's lesson, you will be exploring the various types of blood vessels and understanding its structures. By the end of today's lesson, you should be able to describe the different types of blood vessels and the structures which confer its characteristics and uniqueness. Now let us move on to today's lesson. What are blood vessels?
There are three main kinds of blood vessels: arteries, capillaries, and veins. Arteries are large blood vessels that carry blood from your heart to the rest of your body. This blood is rich in oxygen and nutrients. As arteries get farther away from the heart, they begin to branch and become smaller and smaller. The smallest branches are called capillaries. And this is where the oxygen in your blood is transferred to your tissues. In exchange, the wastes from your cells, including carbon dioxide, are transferred into the blood. Just beyond this area, the capillaries begin to merge together and eventually form larger vessels called veins, which lead back to the heart. As the vessels carry deoxygenated blood back to the heart, waste products are routed to other organs, where they are removed for disposal. As the deoxygenated blood makes its way back through the heart and lungs, it picks up oxygen and nutrients. The heart then pumps the blood out through the arteries, and the cycle is repeated.
Blood vessels are hollow tubes connected all throughout your body from the heart, and they carry blood to different parts of the body from the heart. In this diagram, you can see there are two different colors of blood vessels and a structure of a heart in the middle of the thoracic abdomen, right in the middle of your lungs. The blue vessels indicate the veins, while the red vessels indicate arteries. Now let us take a closer look at both of these. This is a cross-sectional analysis of both artery, vein, and capillaries. These are the three types of blood vessels that we are going to be discussing today. Take a look at the artery. The artery draws blood from the heart and carries it from the heart to all parts of the body. The artery then branches into tinier vessels called arterioles, which then branch into even more microscopic structures called capillaries. Now these capillaries is where the exchange of nutrients, oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place with the tissues. Then from the capillaries, the deoxygenated blood carrying all the waste products drain into venules, which then later merge into the veins, and the blood, deoxygenated blood, is returned to the heart. Now we're going to take a cross-sectional analysis of an artery. If you can see, the outer layer of the artery is composed of collagen fibers. They form the external, the most outer layer for the artery. The second layer, or more commonly called as the middle layer, consists of elastic fibers, which are also composed of collagen fibers and smooth muscles. And the innermost layer is the endothelial layer, which is commonly called as the endothelium. And finally, you see a hollow structure inside the artery, which is called the lumen. And this is the area where the blood flows. Now let us take a closer look into the structure of the artery. The artery has got a very small lumen compared to the vein, and it carries oxygenated blood away from the heart, except for the pulmonary artery. Now, the pulmonary artery takes deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs. It is the most contradictory of all the arteries. Now, the artery has a very thick muscular and elastic wall. Do you understand why the artery, which is embedded deeper into the tissues compared to the vein, must have a much more thick muscular and elastic wall? Yes, dear students, you are correct. The artery has a very important role of pumping blood from the heart to the whole body. Hence, it must be able to withstand a very high pressure. Now, if you take a very close look at the artery, it consists of many elastic tissues which enable the artery for elastic recoil. The reason is the heart, if you notice, it goes into a discontinuous pumping. Because of the elastic recoil, the discontinuous pumping is converted into a very continuous and rhythmic pressure throughout the arteries. Hence, blood flows very smoothly. Now, if you take a look at the artery, as we have shown you in the earlier slide, it consists of 3 layers. The innermost layer is the endothelial layer, and the middle layer, which is composed of the smooth muscles and the elastic fibers, and the outermost layer, which consists mostly of the collagen fibers. Dear students, now I'm going to show you all a microscopic slide. I want you all to be able to identify whether this slide is a structure of an artery or vein. Now let us take a look at the slide. Of course, you would have noticed the word artery written there, but taking a look at the picture of the cross-sectional analysis, how would you distinguish an artery from a vein? The artery has a much smaller lumen compared to the vein and a very thick middle layer, which is evident from this diagram. Now that you have understood how to distinguish the structure of artery via light microscopy, we will move on to the vein. Now, the vein also consists of a thick layer of collagen fibers as its outer layer, but the middle layer is much more thin. It consists far less elastic fibers and smooth muscles. And the inner layer is definitely the endothelial layer, and finally the lumen is much larger compared to the artery. Now, the characteristics and function of the veins. The veins play a very important role in carrying deoxygenated blood back to the heart. However, the pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. This is the only exceptional character of the vein. The veins have a much less smooth muscle component, and hence it carries less elastic tissues. Thus, it has a much thinner wall. This means that the blood pressure through the veins is much lower compared to the arteries. Dear students, you would have noticed that unlike the artery, the vein has valves throughout its structure. Do you understand why is there a need for valves to be present throughout the vein structure? Any guesses? Yes, you're right. The valves ensure that the blood is flowing in a single direction towards the heart. It is to avoid any kind of flowing back of the blood to the organs. Now we're going to take a look at a cross-sectional analysis of a vein under light microscopy. If you see this structure, you will realize that the middle layer is much more thin compared to the artery, as we have shown you earlier, and the lumen is larger for the vein. I am sure, dear students, that after this, given you any histological slide to differentiate between an artery or a vein, you would be able to do it just like that. Okay, we have not finished with our blood vessels chapter. We have to move on to another tiny vessel, a very microscopic vessel called capillaries. The capillaries are very fine structures whereby the wall is only a single cell thick, and it only enables single files of blood cells to flow through it. Of course, the capillaries are numerous in number and they are very microscopic. Approximately 100,000 kilometers of capillaries exist in the human body. Look at the diameter size of the capillaries. It's only 8 microns and only 1 cell thickness. The interesting thing about capillaries is it is the area where the exchange of nutrients and gases happen to the tissues. How is this possible? The capillaries consist of endothelial cells, and in between these endothelial cells there are gaps. These gaps are the ones which enable the exchange of solutes and materials. However, they do not allow the exchange of larger proteins or even red blood cells. Occasionally, white blood cells do leak out from this area into the tissues nearby. Just take a look at the capillary wall. My, it is so thin, almost indistinguishable from the skeletal muscles around the structure. The capillary wall only enables the traveling of a single file of blood cells at a time. Dear students, now that we have understood the various functions, characteristics and the differences in structure between arteries, capillaries and veins, let us summarize the differences in a table. Take a look at the column for arteries. Yes, the arteries play a very important role in transporting blood away from the heart. Dear students, now that we have understood the structural differences between the artery, vein and capillary, let us summarize all that we have learned so far. The arteries play a very important role in transporting blood away from the heart, while the capillaries connect the arterioles to venules. The veins transport the blood back to the heart. Of course, the arteries carry oxygenated blood from the heart to all parts of the body. The exception here would be the pulmonary artery, which carries deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs. The capillaries act as the sites for exchange of substances with the cells, while the veins transport deoxygenated blood back to the heart, except for the pulmonary vein, which brings in oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. In comparison, the thickness of the arterial wall is much greater compared to the veins, and this is followed by the capillaries. There are no valves except for semilunar valves at the base of the aorta and pulmonary artery to ensure that the blood does not flow back into the heart when it is being pumped throughout the body. For the capillaries, they don't need any valves to maintain the pressure. As for the veins, pocket valves are present throughout to prevent backflow of blood. The arteries have to ensure a much higher resistance and hence a higher blood pressure to enable the pumping of blood throughout the body. The blood flows in pulses in very high pressure in the arteries, owing to the fact that the arteries play a very important role of pumping blood throughout the body. However, no pulses are needed for the flow of blood in the capillaries, and the pressure is much lower than the arteries. However, the blood pressure in the capillaries is higher than the veins. The veins function in much lower blood pressure as they are merely returning back the deoxygenated blood to the heart. My dear students, I hope you have basically understood the differences in structure between the artery, vein and capillaries. Now that you have understood the differences in their function, structure and characteristics, let us do a little self-assessment. Question number 1. Which of the following is not a human blood vessel? The choices given are A. Artery, B. Capillary, C. Vein, D. Trachea. This is a very easy question. Of course, since we have just learnt the chapter, the answer would be D. Trachea. What is trachea? Trachea is a tube which is involved in the respiratory system, and it is not part of the blood system. Now let us take a look at question number 2. Which of the following statements is true about veins? 1. Veins have no pulses. 2. All veins carry blood to the heart. 3. Veins carry blood under low pressure. And 4. All veins carry deoxygenated blood. The choices are A. 1 and 2, B. 1, 2 and 4, C. 1, 2 and 3, D. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Yes, the only exception in this question is all veins carry deoxygenated blood. We have learnt so far that not all veins carry deoxygenated blood. Can you recall which is the vein that carries the oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart? Bingo, you got it right. It is the pulmonary vein. Now let us move on to the third question. Blood vessel is a tube that transports dash from one part of the human body to another. The choices are A. Blood, B. Water, C. Nutrients, D. Mineral ions. This is a very easy question. Of course, you would have guessed it that it transports A. Blood. Now let us go to a question which requires you to have a little more contemplation of what you have learnt. Which of the following is not a characteristic of arteries? A. Carry blood away from heart. B. Branch into smaller vessels called venules. C. Have thick muscular wall to withstand high pressure. And D. Have three main layers: endothelium, a middle layer and an outer layer. Yes, the answer is B. Dear students, all the questions that we have done so far are rather easy. Would you like to do something more challenging? Let us do the next question. Which of the following statements correctly matches the blood vessel with its function? The options are A. Q is capable of withstanding high pressure. B. Exchanges of material occurs across the walls of R. C. R carries oxygenated blood. D. R carries blood from Q to P. Now, before we attempt to answer this question, based on the diagram, can you let me know which is the artery, which is the vein and which is the capillary? P. Let us take a look at P. Is P an artery or a vein? And let us take a look at Q. Is Q an artery or a vein? How would you distinguish an artery from a vein? Dear students, I hope you are able to recall from what we have learned so far. Understand that arteries have a much more smaller lumen compared to the vein, and the arteries have a much more thicker middle layer. In between P and Q, using these characteristics, can you let me know which is the artery and which is the vein? Yes, you're right. P is the artery and Q is the vein. And R, no doubt, it is the capillary. So let us take a look at the choices which have been given. Q is capable of withstanding high pressure. Blood pressure through the veins is much less compared to the artery, hence A is excluded. Exchanges of material occurs across the walls of R. Yes, that is right. C. R carries oxygenated blood. One must understand that R not only carries oxygenated blood but also deoxygenated blood because it is a site of exchange. D. R carries blood from Q to P. This is unlikely because R carries blood from P to Q. The blood flows from the artery to the arterioles to the capillaries to the venules and back to the vein and back to the heart. My dear students, does this question answer a lot of your doubts pertaining to this subject? If it has answered, let us see if we can do a much more synthesis of what we have learnt. Okay, let's take a look at the mastery test. Dear students, can you name all the human blood vessels that we have studied today? Yes, arteries, veins and capillaries. Are there any exceptions to this? Yes, the pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs, while the pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. Now, question number 2. State 3 differences between arteries, capillaries and veins. For this question, I'm only going to show you the summarizing table which was shown in the earlier slides. In this table, the differences between arteries, capillaries and veins are very clearly shown. Just make sure that you are aware and you are able to distinguish all the characteristics, the features and the functions of arteries, veins and capillaries. And for the final question, explain the function of arteries. Yes, arteries play a major role in transporting oxygenated blood from the heart to all parts of the body. The pulmonary artery returns the deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs. So dear students, I hope that summarizes all that we have learned for today. Till we meet again in our next lesson, I am Dr. Meena saying bye-bye from iTTV.